Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for coming to this regular meeting of the McLean County Board this Thursday, April 13th, 2023. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please rise for the invocation or moment of silence by Member Metzger.
I was prepared to provide a prayer from St. Teresa of Avila, and she is a saint born in 1515, died in 1587, and she was canonized by Pope Gregory XV in 1622. She is the first female doctor of the church. And this prayer is trusting God, but I think it falls well into our situation that occurred out on the Olympia school district campus out near Stanford. There was a fire this afternoon, and we want to be very thankful that we have some very amazing rural township fire departments. The responding fire department was Allen Township, but with assistance from Mount Hope, Atlanta, Bloomington Township, Dale Township, Danvers Township, or Danvers, Minear, Armington. We have to thank our Sheriff's Department and EMA. So based on that, I'm going to read St. Teresa's prayer, trusting God. May nothing disturb you. Let nothing frighten you. All things pass. God does not leave. Patient endurance attains all things. Whoever has God lacks nothing. God alone is enough. Amen.
Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The clerk, please call the roll.
Jeff Tompkins.
Here.
George Wendt is here and stepped out for a moment. Crystal Abel.
Here.
Jack Abraham.
Here.
Corey Byrne.
Present.
Beverly Bell. Here. Jeannie Biles.
Here.
Lindsay Bloomfield. Leah Klein.
Present.
Chuck Erickson.
Present.
William John Friedrich.
Present.
Elizabeth Johnston.
Here.
Val Lehman.
Present.
Catherine Metzger.
Present.
Adam Reeves.
Here.
Jim Rogal. Here. Natalie Roseman Mendoza.
Here.
Susan Schaefer, absent. James Solner.
Here.
I'm sorry.
Here.
She's remotely, but we haven't voted on it yet. So put her down.
James Solner.
Here.
John McIntyre.
Here, we have 19 members present and one for remote, so we do have a quorum. And having conducted the opening roll call and declaring a quorum that is physically present, I'd like to inform the board committee that Member Schaefer has requested to participate remotely under the County Board Rule 20-20 and in accordance with the Opening Meetings Act. Notice was received by Member Schaefer in accordance with our rules. Does anyone object to allowing Member Schaefer from participating remotely? Any objection? Hearing none, if there's no objections then, I approve the request of Member Schaefer to attend remotely and deem her present at this meeting, so we do have 20 members present. And we'll move on from there. We have one application to appear by members of the public in reference to an agenda item, and that's Mr. Zach Gittrich. Mr. Gittrich, you have 3 minutes to speak, and check the podium and make sure we have the mic on.
Hello. Okay. To the most honorable and esteemed county board members, I do not oppose this corrections officers union contract. Pay them what they deserve to be paid. I personally think it's kind of BS, excuse my acronym, that part-time workers won't be included in the union contract. All workers deserve workers' protection. In fact, we just passed a constitutional amendment for workers' rights. Anybody thought of that? Sheriff Lane says he needs 64 COs to run the jail effectively at its current population size, which during his tenure is about 213 people. But some of you may have forgotten, cash bail is going to be abolished. Now, I know it's in the courts, but I'll bet anyone here money, and I don't have a lot of money, I'm willing to bet it, the Illinois Supreme Court will decide correctly to abolish cash bail. We expect incarceration rates pretrial to shrink. There may be a reality that jail will never hold 200 people again. The county board spent upwards of $44 million, and correct me if that's not the correct figure, to increase the capacity of the jail from 200 to 440. That's a 120% increase. Since the new jail opened in 2019, it has not once had an average monthly population above 250. Not once. We were supposed to get better mental health in the jail. We got a special needs pod that sometimes can fit about 16 people in there. On average, 30 to 35% of the jail population has some form of mental, behavioral, developmental disability. That's around 68, not including people not diagnosed. There's only 3.5 mental health workers at the jail. Will you still need 64 COs? Meanwhile, our mobile mental health response team has only 8 crisis workers that go into the field. They ideally need at least 15 in order to meet the demands of the community. The starting salary for a CO, $44,769.92. Starting salary for a crisis responder, $33,000. And that doesn't include a loyalty bonus and a recruitment bonus and any other bonuses that may come. The county board made a mistake increasing the jail capacity by 120% when the demand was never that high to begin with. Cash bail abolition is the future reality. It's going to happen. The opposition needs to accept it. The gravy train is over for counties and judicial districts to profit off of mass incarceration. Taxpayer dollars need to be reallocated away from incarceration. And since I still have a little bit of time, those research department at the sheriff's office, do you know how hard they work? You know how many FOIAs I file? And I'm never going to stop. You need to at least hire another person. I mean, it's criminal. These people over there, the records department, they are fighting for freedom. They are fighting for justice. They are fighting for government accountability and transparency. They are heroes. And I cede my time.
Thank you, Mr. Kittredge. We'll go on to item 6, the consent agenda is before you. What say you? Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Member Metzger. Is there a second? Second by Member Bloomfield. Any comments, questions, additions, or corrections? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. And opposed? And the motion has passed. There are no transfer items to vote on as part of the consent agenda, and there are no resolutions or commendations or congratulations tonight. So we'll move on to the standing committee reports, and we'll go to Vice Chair Johnston.
Thank you, Chair. Executive Committee has 8 items for action tonight, and I would like to request that we combine items E, F, G, and H, if there are no objections.
Items E, F,
G, and H.
G, and H. Combine those. Are there any objections? Hearing none, you may proceed.
Okay, thank you. First item up for action is 7A1A, request approval of an emergency appropriation ordinance amending the McLean County fiscal year 2023 combined annual appropriation and budget ordinance for the American Rescue Plan Fund 0163, and this is in regards to the Kamlara Park roads. And I so move.
Motion by Vice Chair Johnson. Is there a second? Second by Member Abraham. Comments or questions? Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Thank you. Motion is passed.
All right, next item is 7A1B, request approval of an emergency appropriation ordinance amending the McLean County fiscal year 2023 combined annual appropriation and budget ordinance for the American Rescue Plan 0163 regarding Kamlara Park Lagoon. And I so move.
Motion by Vice Chair Johnson, second by Member Rogal. Comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. And opposed? And the motion is passed.
All right, next item up is item 7A1C. This is request approval of amendments to section 20-13 G2C of chapter 20 of the McLean County Code under the county board rules, and I so move.
Motion by Vice Chair Johnston, second by Member Byrne. Comments or questions? Discussion. Member Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have sat on the Rules Subcommittee, I don't know how long, maybe since 2014. I can't remember how long I've been on the Rules Subcommittee, but I've been on the Rules Subcommittee for a long time. I also sat through the Rules Subcommittee when we were discussing changing this rule. I sat on the Executive Committee when we were discussing changing the rule. The rule came back to the Rules Subcommittee. We voted on it. No minds had been changed since the last time we had met. And I'm not sure any minds have been changed on this regarding the Executive Committee. The reason I speak on this is I think to some extent should explain why I will be voting no. And I don't expect that I will be changing any minds, because no minds have been changed as I've continued to watch this thing go through the process. But I do think it's important that there are people that understand why I am voting no. If you look at the rule says, with the acknowledgement that the most appropriate forum, and I would stress the phrase, the most appropriate forum, for the general public to address county board members is the committee charged with overseeing the subject matter of the address. When we enacted this rule, it was bipartisan. It wasn't the Republicans stuffing down the throat of the other party this rule. That was not the intent. That's not what we did. It was bipartisan. And, we tried to come up with a rule that we thought was fair to everybody. There wasn't any political gamesmanship that was being played. One side wasn't trying to get a political advantage over another. We just thought that this was a good rule. This rule was amended, it looks like, on 4/21/20, and it has a reference to 24 hours for an agenda item and 2 business days, if I'm reading that correctly, for a non-agenda item. The reason we put that in there was if someone wanted to come to the county board, for example, and speak about, well, this road in front of my house is not working right, and no one ever comes to fix it. And, if they had sent in the request, that person possibly could have been directed to the city of Bloomington because it wasn't a county issue. The purpose of the rule is to direct people to the right source, to the most appropriate forum, so they could address the issue there. I would point out here that even if the person feels that, hey, I still don't like that, they can still send an email to their county board member and express their opinions that way. This doesn't stop anybody from expressing opinions. But the purpose of it was to direct them to the most appropriate spot. Now, I know the discussion has been, well, Chuck, we don't really need 2 business days for that. 24 hours should suffice. But I would disagree. There's sometimes when you need to get in people, and instead of having them come here and address us about Donald Trump or Joe Biden or some issue that we have no control over, sometimes county has had the opportunity to direct them to the right source as to where the question can be more appropriately addressed. They could also be directed, if it's a non-agenda item, to the committee which has oversight over the issue, which is really, under our rules and the way we do things here, the most appropriate venue for that, because we have a committee structure. We are run by our committees, and sometimes it's better someone could come here, they could address us, and it would be actually better for them if they actually went to the committee and addressed it. there is no partisanship going on here. There's nothing sinister going on here. The whole point of this is direct people in the right direction to the right committee. We're not the town of Normal. We're not the city of Bloomington. The purpose of the rule was to maintain decorum and send people to the right spot where they needed to be. It is not my intent that I was going to change any minds today, but it is my intent that I wanted people to know why and I don't know how many others may be voting no. The county board isn't broken. The county board functions fine. And I think there's no need to change this, but I do want to point out that this rule has nothing sinister in it, and there's no intent to play political games with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there further comments? Member Klein?
Thank you, Chairman. Maybe it's the lawyer in you, Member Erickson, for not mentioning the fact that it passed the executive committee with a bipartisan vote just this week. So the bipartisan issue, I think, is moot, and I think it's a little unfair to bring it up in that way. I'm going to vote for this because this is about access. People work, people have busy lives. To expect that people are paying such close attention to what's happening at the county to figure out that they need to come and request an opportunity to speak 2 business days before a meeting is asking a lot of the community. If you don't like what people have to say, you shouldn't run for public office, right? We hear from people all the time, and that's our job, is to sit and to listen, even if it doesn't come to our committees or it's not appropriate, possibly in your opinion, but that's our job as public officials, is to hear what people have to say. That's why we're here. So I'm going to vote for this, and I just simply have to say that this isn't partisan. This is about access, and it's not partisan because it passed exec in a bipartisan way. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, discussion?
I just want to reference back to in the Rules Committee.
Member Johnson,
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, you have the floor.
Thank you. In the Rules Subcommittee, in the discussion, the staff was asked if this would be necessarily helpful to keep it at the 24 versus 2 business days. And staff did answer that 24 hours was sufficient to redirect people to the appropriate place. So this is not meant to be sinister, the change. It is meant to simplify the process and to make, as Member Klein said, there is an accessibility issue, but for me, the bigger issue is simplification. Because there are many people in this community who do not live and breathe, they do not live and die by county and what's going on. And so anytime if somebody wants to come, keeping the rules as easy to understand as possible was the purpose. So I will be voting for this.
Okay, are there any further comments? Member Erickson, round 2.
Thank you. I would say to Member Klein, it might be the college professor in you, but people already have access. They're not being denied access. I mean, this rule doesn't deny people access. The purpose of the rules is to send people to the right spot. I say that respectfully. I say that respectfully to everyone. But the rule is not a bad rule. It has legitimate purposes. And in my view, if you ask county administrator, I sometimes believe if you asked Mike to do somersaults, she'd do them for you because she wants to keep the peace. Okay, she wants to keep everybody happy. Okay, if you ask administration, that's going to be great. Okay, but would they like the extra time? It would probably be useful to them. So, for those reasons, I'm going to vote the way I'm going to vote.
Okay, are there further comments? Hearing none, I will call the question. Chairman will vote in case of tie.
Jeff Tompkins. No. George Wendt. Oh, no. Crystal Abel. Yes. Jack Abraham.
Yes.
Corey Byrne,
Yes.
Beverly Bell,
Yes.
Jeannie Biles,
Yes.
Lindsay Bloomfield. No. Leah Klein. Yes. Chuck Erickson,
No.
William Jan Friedrich,
No.
Elizabeth Johnston,
Yes.
Val Lehman,
Yes.
Catherine Metzger,
No.
Adam Reeves,
No.
Jim Rogal,
Yes.
Natalie Roseman Mendoza,
Yes.
Susan Schaefer. No. James Solner,
No.
John McIntyre,
No. What do we have? No idea. I don't either. So we do have a tie, motion fails. We'll move on. Member Johnson, you have the floor.
Thank you. Next item up is 7A1D. This is request approval of amendments to Section 20-16B, 13, and 14 of Chapter 20 of the McLean County Code, County Board Rules, and I so move.
Motion by Vice Chairman Johnson, second by Member Abraham. Comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion's passed.
All right, thank you. Next up, we have item 7A1E, F, G, and H. These are items, request approval of amendments to Section 20-16B, 16 and 17 of Chapter 20 of the McLean County Code, County Board Rules. Request approval of amendment to Section 20-16C to B and C of the Chapter 20 of the McLean County Code, County Board Rules. Request approval of amendments to Section 20-16D, 6B and C of Chapter 20 of the McLean County Code, County Board Rules. And request approval of amendments to Section 20-16G, 4B and C of Chapter 20 of the McLean County Code, County Board Rules, and I so move.
Motion by Vice Chairman Johnson. Is there a second? Second by Member Lehman. Comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. And opposed? I'm sorry. And the motion is passed.
All right, Executive Committee has no more items for action. Our general report can be found pages 30 through 35 of the unapproved minutes.
Thank you. We'll go to the report of the Finance Committee, Chairman Metzger.
The Finance Committee has no items to be presented, as all were included in the consent agenda. Our general report can be found on pages 13 through 18 of the unapproved meeting minutes. I am open to any questions if people have some.
Okay, we'll go on to the report of the Health Committee. In this case, it would be, President would be my Vice Chair Johnston.
Thank you. Health Committee has no items for action, and our minutes can be found in the general report.
Thank you. We're going to the report of the Justice Committee, Chairman Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Justice Committee brings two items for action. The first item is item 7D1A, request approval of an emergency appropriation ordinance amending the McLean County fiscal year 2023 combined annual appropriation and budget ordinance, CAC, and I so move.
Motion by Chairman Erickson. Is there a second? Second by Member Bloomfield. Comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. And opposed? And the motion's passed.
Next item is item 7D1B, request approval of an emergency appropriation ordinance amending the McLean County fiscal year 2023 combined annual appropriation and budget ordinance for Fund 0129, and I so move.
Motion by Chairman Erickson. Is there a second? Second by Member Friedrich. Comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed. Motion is passed.
Mr. Chairman, the Justice Committee has no other items for action. Our general report can be found on pages 9 through 12 of the unapproved minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go on to the report of the transportation. I'm sorry. Going to jump ahead a little bit. Report of the Property Committee, Chair Lehman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The Property Committee has no items to be presented for action this evening. Our general report may be found on pages 23 to 29 of the unapproved minutes packet. Thank you.
All right, thank you. The report of the Land Use and Development Committee, Chair Klein.
The Land Use and Development Committee has no items to be presented for action. Our minutes can be found in the unapproved minutes, page 6 through 8.
Thank you. Report of the Transportation Committee, Chair Rogal.
Yeah, the Transportation Committee has no items to present for action tonight. Our general report can be found on pages 2 through 5 of the unapproved minutes.
Thank you, sir. We'll go on to the report of the County Administrator, Ms. Taylor.
Thank you, Chairman McIntyre. Administration has no items to present for action this evening and no other items for information.
Thank you. We'll go on to item 9 on our agenda, appearance by members of the public and county employees in reference to any item not on the agenda. We have 4 applicants to speak tonight. Each applicant will have 3 minutes to address our board. The first one is Honorable Spencer Johansson, the Mayor of Lexington. Welcome.
Thank you for having us tonight. The Rural Mayors Association has been discussing the Bloomington Normal Airports Authority plans to expand its tax base through all of McLean County. As you can imagine, we're opposed to it, and we've been dealing with this for the past 3 weeks. We only found out about it 3 weeks ago, but you know, in small towns, you hear it from all the citizens. So yesterday in the morning, I got a call from this elderly lady, and she said that I helped you out. I called the governor's office, and I left a message that he needed to call you. So if my phone rings, excuse me, I may have to take that tonight. But we're aware that the executive committee has already tabled this matter until June, but we thought it was important to share our concerns. In a world where we want transparency, in my opinion, there's been absolutely none on this bill. We found out about this probably a month ago. The Airport Authority at no time reached out to any of the 19 rural mayors that I represent as chairman of the McLean County Mayors Association. We were told by the Airport Authority that it was our responsibility to attend their meetings and review their minutes, which I did after the fact, and I looked through the ones from June to March, and there was nothing mentioned about this. As I mentioned, the McLean County Mayors Association represents 19 smaller communities outside the Twin Cities. The majority of those have passed resolutions like the one you tabled at the Executive Committee. And they are still coming in from the townships, schools, and other taxing bodies, plus numerous residents that are very opposed. Now, at the executive meeting, Mr. Cinder made a statement in effect that it's a terrible presence when one unit of government opposes another unit of government from setting its policy. Well, I believe it's a worse precedence when one unit of government tries to impose a new tax on other unit of governments without giving the voters a choice. So I guess what I'm asking is for you guys to look at this SB, let me see, 684, I believe is the bill number. And we were watching it previously because it was first brought to the legislature as another bill. We were watching that bill number, and then at the last minute it changed, and they attached it to a shell bill, and it passed the Senate. And so now it's at the House. We are going to do everything we can to fight this because the rural taxpayers can't afford this. And I think some of the numbers that they threw out, look at my time, I'm about out, so okay. 185 passengers use the facility, 48,000 of those residents from the Twin Cities, 6,000 from the rural McLean County, and 138 from outside McLean County. Where do we stop taxing people? Do we go to Livingston County and add a tax? You know, I think the Airport Authority needs to look at different ways they can generate revenue. That's all I've got. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Our next speaker is Ms. Anna Ziegler, representing the McLean County Farm Bureau. Welcome.
Good evening. I'm also here this evening to talk about the Airport Authority bill. We just wanted to take this opportunity to share our position and perspective. McLean County Farm Bureau opposes the efforts of Bloomington Normal Airport Authority to expand the boundaries of its taxing district to include all of McLean County via state legislation, which is SB 684. I have 4 reasons, and I'll see if I can fit them all in. Number 1, expanding the boundaries of the airport authority would increase property taxes on farm property owners and rural residents with little, if any, direct benefit. Central Illinois Regional Airport is an asset to the community. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find anybody that would say otherwise. However, the majority of the economic activity generated by the airport occurs within the city limits of Bloomington-Normal in the form of dollars spent on hotel stays, restaurant visits, and sales tax revenue. The rural communities don't get that same benefit. If the airport authority is expanded to all of McLean County, about 1/3 of the EAV that's added will be farm property, and the airport has negligible, if any, direct benefits to agriculture. Adding a new taxing district will pile on to the already increasing property tax burden for farm property owners. The total equalized assessed value of farm property in McLean County has increased 67% in the past 10 years, going from $274 million in 2011 to $459 million in 2021. The number of acres has not increased, so that means that the farm property owners are paying significantly higher property taxes even before we talk about any rate increases. The airport authority has indicated they don't need additional funds, but they mentioned that this is part of their contingency or strategic planning efforts, and we can read between the lines that means they may need to raise taxes in the future. Increasing the EAV within the taxing district also raises the bond limit, which would allow the airport to issue larger bonds and use property taxes to service those bonds. The airport authority mentioned in their comments on Monday a potential cost of $61 per 100 acres. To be a full-time corn and soybean farmer in central Illinois, it takes approximately 1,200 acres. Most farmers don't own all that property, but the prior property taxes get passed on to the farmer in the form of higher rental costs. Number 3, rather than expanding the taxing district to rural McLean County, we believe the airport should explore other options. It's already been mentioned that 71% of the airport's traffic comes from outside of McLean County. Only 3% comes from rural McLean County. So we think that those that use the airport should probably bear the cost, and property taxes is not the way to be a user fee. We also oppose the method of this proposed expansion via state legislation. We believe that property tax issues and annexation of additional territory should be decided by front door referendum rather than by state legislation. In fact, the method laid out in the Illinois State Airport Statute for expanding an airport authority is a referendum process, allowing the voters impacted by the change to vote directly on the question. The General Assembly can and has twice in the past circumvented that process with state legislation. By pursuing this change via state legislation, as the airport authority has chosen to do so, most of those who vote on this issue have no interest at stake. The vast majority of Illinois state senators and state representatives don't represent McLean County, so their vote on SB 684 will have
Thank you.
zero impact on their constituents, and the McLean County voters who are impacted won't have the chance to vote them out if they would like to. So thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep, and I'm over time, so thank you.
Our next speaker is Ms. Rhonda Bear, the Honorable Mayor of Carlock.
Good evening. As you might have guessed, I'm also here in opposition to Senate Bill 684, the Sierra bill. And the Village of Carlock Board has approved a resolution opposing it as well. A couple reasons, and I'm just going to say one of my reasons is the same that Anna said. Our taxpayers will not directly benefit from the additional tax. We will not see the added sales tax, the added hotel tax, the added property taxes from businesses and business travelers that come through the Bloomington-Normal Airport. Those benefits will be Bloomington-Normal. My second reason is that another new tax on rural McLean County residents essentially robs our small communities and other local taxing bodies of future potential tax dollars that could be needed for real services for our residents. Things like roads, water, emergency services, libraries, parks, and schools. Our budgets are tight because of limited tax bases, of fewer businesses and residents, and limited resources. Rural elected officials are acutely aware of the tax burden our residents already carry, and we work hard to find other means of income through user-based taxes and fees, loans, and grants. We walk a very narrow line to maintain our solvency, but we refrain from adding taxes as much as possible unless it is absolutely needed. Sierra has not convinced us this tax-based expansion of Airport Authority is absolutely needed by our constituency. Carluck is making real efforts and great strides to grow our community because we know growth ensures our stability and longevity. However, it will only take one catastrophic event, such as the closing of our school, which is a real threat to us, or layoffs at Rivian, for example, that could wield a devastating blow for us. Bloomington Normal can absorb some of those losses far better than those of us in rural communities. We ask ourselves every year during the tax levy season, does this tax have meaningful and direct benefit to our residents and community? And is it necessary? Because we know we cannot cry wolf. We know if or when we're in real need for a tax increase, we'd better be able to honestly tell our constituents why. Can Sarah honestly tell us the same with this tax increase? We don't believe so. And finally, the last concern I wish to express is that we believe a Sierra tax on rural McLean County residents would be dangerously approaching taxation without representation. It is my understanding that the board would be elected 2 members by Bloomington mayor, 2 members by the normal mayor, and 3 by the McLean County Board Chairman. And though I honestly know that Board Chairman McIntyre will do whatever he can to make sure that rural McLean County is represented, it is not a guarantee for the future. And there is no guarantee or requirement that any of the board members reside outside of Bloomington Normal. In fact, 3 county selections will always be outnumbered by the Bloomington Normal representatives appointed by the mayors. This structure may be legal to the letter of the law, but in my opinion, admittedly non-professional, I do not see a scenario where the rural community will ever be fairly represented by this authority board.
Thank you, ma'am.
This is
Your time is
taxation
up.
without representation, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. We have one more speaker tonight, and that's Mr. Alan Grusing. Welcome, Mr. Grusing. I think so.
Thank you, Chairman McIntyre.
Mayor Grusing.
Mayor Grusing. I
In
was going to say,
Bellflower.
I'm the mayor of Bellflower.
I apologize. Thank you, sir. Welcome.
No problem. Thank you. The 3 people before me said everything basically that I would be saying as well. We all know that Bellflower is a very small town in the far southeast corner of McLean County. The reason people move there, many of the people who are there have lived there their whole lives. Sadly, they're starting to pass away, and we're getting some new people who move in, always because your taxes in Bellflower are so much lower. We can get a house, we can live here so much more economically better than we can in a large city. So that's why they move there. I mean, we have no school. We have only 3 businesses, a grain elevator, a feed mill, and an FS plant. We have we don't even have a coffee shop anymore. That closed in January. And we certainly have no hotels. So any revenue that would be coming in through the airport is not coming to Bellflower, I can say. There have been comments made about the number of people who come in from across the country and even around the world to meet and work at Rivian and Ferraro and Brandt and State Farm, and while all that's very true, none of that transpires to Bellflower. Nobody is staying in our hotel, right? We don't have one. It's also been mentioned that about the airport usage, and I will say the people in Bellflower actually don't use the Bloomington or the Sierra Airport. They go to Chicago or Indianapolis, believe it or not, even to Champaign or Peoria, but not to Sierra. And I've even asked why with no cost for parking. And the answer is we have much better flight schedules out of those other cities, but we can drive there and get wherever we want to go by the time we would have to wait a day for another flight in or out of Sierra. We've been told that the FedEx facility at Sierra serves all of McLean County. Not true. Our eastern side of McLean County is actually served out of Champaign. I've been tracking the packages to see where they come. Been said that OSF Life Flight supports all of McLean County. We're handled by Carl out of Urbana. You've heard the statistics on the airport usage in terms of only 6% of the passengers going through the airport are from rural McLean County. I think probably zero of that is ours. And again, as the others have said, this tax on our folks is a huge thing. We have small projects that cost maybe $10,000 or $15,000, and we have to fight to find the money to do that. Now suddenly, a new tax on them that we can't justify to our residents is just unheard of. So both our village board and the township boards have joined the other towns and townships in passing a resolution to oppose the airport authority expansion. Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, that concludes our speakers for tonight. Item 10 is other business and communication. Anyone have anything? I want to remind everyone it's very important that we get attendance to all of our committees, including the boards, but all of our committees, so that we do have a quorum. It's very important that we function that way. Anyone else have anything? If not, well, have a good evening, and this meeting's adjourned.